Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We are joined now by Dave McCormick. He is the Republican U.S. Senate candidate going against incumbent Bob Casey. It's one of the most watched races in the nation. I'm going to make a bold prediction. You're going to win your primary on Tuesday.
For sure.
Of course, you're unopposed.
Yeah.
Bob Casey seeking a fourth six-year term in Washington. He has won 6 times statewide. Elections are mostly referendums on incumbents. Why should voters choose you and not him?
Well, I think the first reason is the country is in deep trouble economically, from a national security perspective, the border, the challenges abroad, spiritually, what's happening on our campuses. So we're in trouble as a country, and I'm a 7th-generation Pennsylvanian, someone who's gone to West Point, served in the military, created jobs in Pennsylvania. I'm someone who's from the outside. Bob Casey is, you say, 30 years in public office, 18 years in the Senate, 98% of the time voted with Joe Biden, and has voted for the excessive spending that's led to inflation, the war on fossil fuels, open border policies, and he's out of touch. And I can tell you this because I go across our Commonwealth, out of touch with the needs of Pennsylvania.
He was here a few weeks ago, Bob Casey, campaigning hard on greedflation and shrinkflation, as he calls it. He blames what he calls greedy corporations for making record profits, charging more, giving less. Yeah. It is a populist message for sure. Do you disagree with it?
Yeah, well, I absolutely disagree in the following sense. Bidenomics, which Bob Casey has supported every step of the way, has been terrible for Pennsylvanians. 60% of Pennsylvanians live paycheck to paycheck. For them, prices have gone up 20% and wages have gone up 14 or 15%. So they're getting squeezed on food, fuel, and rent. And that's the direct consequence of this enormous spending. Republicans and Democrats alike have been spending too much money for decades. But under Joe Biden, it's been a hockey stick. And the war on energy has driven up fuel prices, which is driving inflation.
Are corporations greedy?
Well, listen, I'm not going to sit here and defend any corporation. They're trying to drive profit. So I'm not saying there isn't some corporation that may have changed the size of its packaging. But this is a distraction from the drivers of inflation, which are the terrible policies of Joe Biden, which Bob Casey has supported every step of the way.
You have been a very successful hedge fund manager. You're very wealthy. Democrats seem the attack they're going to take on you is you're too wealthy to relate to average Pennsylvanians. What do you say to that?
Well, listen, I grew up 7th-generation Pennsylvania in rural Pennsylvania in Bloomsburg. Everything I have, I've earned, and it's been the benefit of a great country and a lot of luck. I'm proud of my success. I think we should want all of our kids to be successful. And I've had a life of service. I went to West Point, I served in the military, I served in the government. And so I'm deeply committed to America, and I think my success in business will help me be a better senator.
There continues to be nagging reporting about your residency and background since you just brought that up. A story today in the New York Times, you've claimed to grow up on a farm, quote unquote, humble beginnings, but the fact of the matter is your dad was a college president, you were in residences that were pretty nice. Do you want voters to think you grew up poor? Did you grow up poor?
Well, I've never said I grew up poor. What I said is I had a modest beginning, and that everything that I have, I've earned myself. I was very fortunate. My mom and dad were both public school teachers. My dad went from the public schools to being a professor and ultimately became president of Bloomsburg State College, which is a source of great pride. And I grew up on that campus, but we had a family farm. And I worked in the summers baling hay and trimming Christmas trees. And that's
you mentioned
what
West Point. Why not just say, I've been wildly successful as a hedge fund manager, and that should be lauded, not hidden or kept under wraps?
I agree.
Okay.
No, no, there's nothing about my career or life that I'm not proud of. But the reason I always go to West Point is because duty, honor, country, which you learn at West Point, is the reason that I'm running for the Senate now. It's the same motivation.
We got to take a quick time out. Stay with us. Much more with Dave McCormick after the break. Well, welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We have Republican U.S. Senate candidate Dave McCormick. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I want to start with immigration. It's a topic you are intimately familiar with. Familiar with. Your wife, Dina, is an Egyptian immigrant. As a senator, how would you fix what everybody calls a broken system that, frankly, has not been appropriately dealt with since Reagan?
Yeah, well, listen, if we had all sat in a room here on the day that Joe Biden took office and said, how bad could it get? We never would have imagined it could have gotten this bad. 10 million illegal migrants, 160 people last year that were on the terrorist watch list that were apprehended, 4,000 fentanyl deaths directly tied to the border. This is a crisis of epic proportion, and Bob Casey has been responsible every step of the way. He's voted against border funding. He's voted against.
Give me one or two things you would do to fix it.
Well, the most important thing is apply the executive orders that President Trump used, that Biden could use to close the border. Number two, and this is controversial, I would use the military very selectively to go after the cartels in Mexico.
Put them on the border?
Well, no, I would put them across the border to take out the cartels. The cartels are an enormously significant national security risk. And I want to say this, less than almost 100,000 Americans last year killed from fentanyl, 4,000 here in Pennsylvania. This is an enormous national security threat. And on legal immigration, as you said, my wife's an immigrant. We need to reform our legal immigration system, and I'd be a strong advocate of that.
Let's talk about abortion, your abortion stance. There's been claims and counterclaims about where you stand. I want you to set the record straight. I'm not going to say anything. Where do you stand when it comes to a woman's right to choose?
Well, I believe it's a states' rights issue. With the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think the decision should be made.
So there shouldn't be a federal law?
Shouldn't be a federal law.
Okay.
I'm opposed to bans. I'm for the three exceptions. I believe, but I'm not for
the three exceptions: rape, incest, life of the mother.
Life of the mother, and I'm not for the extreme position of the Democratic Party and Bob Casey, who has signed a law which said there should be abortion up until the due date. I think we can find common ground on this. Common ground is
Pennsylvania right now is 24 weeks.
Hey, we have a law.
Where are you with that?
Listen, I believe it's a states' rights. We have a law that's been signed by Democrats and Republicans alike, and guess what? The governor who signed it into place, a guy named Casey, right? So we've decided at the state level what it should be for Pennsylvania, and I think that's where the decision should be made.
So no federal rule, no federal law,
no, sir.
Just whatever any state. So you're comfortable with states in the South that have banned it?
Well, listen, I'm comfortable with the idea that this should be not in the courts, but a legislative decision,
okay.
And I'm comfortable with the fact that the people of Pennsylvania should make their decision.
Last weekend in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump endorsed you. He famously did not endorse you in your last primary run, and he endorsed Mehmet Oz, who won by 900 votes. That endorsement might have cost you that election. What's your relationship with him now?
Well, listen, here's the situation. Last election, he opposed me, as you know. Politics is a contact sport, and I had some contact, but I think President Trump and I both agree that we need to change the leadership in the country. We agree that Pennsylvania is critical to that. I've endorsed him, and I support him in his bid for the
in PA,
president.
is Trump's support of you a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think his support for me certainly helps get out the vote, and I think my support for him will hopefully help him as well.
In his endorsement, Trump said you're a good man and, quote, he's given up a lot, meaning you. He's given up a lot to do this. In retrospect, as you answer tough questions like I'm throwing at you and get the scrutiny that you're getting, is the price too steep?
Well, listen, I believe in America. I've served my country on multiple occasions in the past. I think we're in trouble, and I believe that when elected to the Senate, I can do something about it. So I think these are small sacrifices compared to what so many before us have made, and I'm honored to do it.
Well, we're very happy you joined us today. Thanks very much, Dave McCormick. Good luck to you. Dave McCormick, Republican candidate for Senate. He will win the primary on Tuesday. Don't go anywhere. More on This Week in Pennsylvania. We'll come right back.